As we begin our examination of the installation of a residential garage door, we'll repeat a number of things that you've already heard in earlier portions of this training series. The first example of this repetition is that the manufacturer's installation instructions must always be followed. Now, this is especially important because manufacturers produce products that are safe and dependable, but variations on their installation may affect their operation, and you don't want to be responsible for a work defect that results in an accident or in a loss of customer satisfaction. Let's continue our review of important professional habits that are just as important as the skills you're learning. Learning and practicing good work habits is one of the most important aspects of any job. And this is especially true regarding the safe installation of the largest moving object in a house. Door sections are inherently heavy and awkward to handle. Caution should be exercised when handling sections, springs, and related hardware. Developing good work habits will make your installations quicker, easier, and increase your earnings potential. Think about things in an efficient manner, from loading the material in the truck to completing the job. The first step of an installation begins before you arrive on the job site. For most, it means getting the truck cleaned and ready to load. When you load your truck, make sure that each item is loaded in the order that you want to take it off. Examples are loading the bottom section on the truck first. That way, when you unload the truck at the job site, the bottom section is unloaded last. Before leaving the shop, conduct a truck inventory to be sure that all the proper materials have been loaded. Having to return to the shop for items creates downtime and might be annoying to your anxious customer. Remember that you're judged by the work you do. Go out of your way to make sure the job is perfect. Even go so far as to do something unexpected and above the call. You'll be remembered and requested again. Before moving on to the installation, it's of vital importance to establish that as a professional, safety should always be the installer's primary concern. Safety applies to you, your customers, and their family members, and even those who will live in those homes in future years. You never want to experience the personal pain of finding out that a tragedy occurred as a result of something you did. If you follow manufacturer's instructions, apply yourself seriously to this work, and take pride in your work, you'll protect against such tragedies. Upon arriving at the job site, double-check the address. The truck should be parked close to the work area, but be conscious of the customer's property. If the truck leaks oil or other fluids, take the necessary precautions to prevent customer complaints. Meet with the homeowner, representative, or foreman to make sure they know you're there to install their new garage door system. This enables you to establish a good working relationship and shows that you're a professional. Before taking the door or any tools off the truck, measure the garage door opening and check for proper clearances. Also, make sure the opening has been correctly framed. All mounting surfaces should be at least 1 1/2 inches thick and nailed securely to the garage framing studs. This assures the lag bolts used throughout the installation will have a substantial fastening surface. If the door being installed has a torsion spring, pay particular attention to the spring pad. Make sure it's securely fastened with long framing nails. Re-nail or screw in additional lag screws if necessary. Your tools are meant to save you time. Wear a tool belt and organize your tools so you know where each item is without having to search for it. This practice alone can save up to 20% of your time during the day. Take time to prepare and set up the job efficiently. Set out the hardware, separate the screws, hinges, spring parts, and lay them out so that you can see them and move across the sections and back without wasting motion. For your own safety, always wear the correct safety equipment, including a hard hat, safety glasses, and steel-toed shoes. We're going to look at two popular methods of installation: stacking and nailing, and installing track and holding sections in place with rollers. We'll begin with stacking and nailing. Temporarily, but securely, nail stop molding to the wood jambs. Adjustments can be made later in the process, but the molding should overlap the inside face of the jamb by approximately 1/8 inch. Now it's time to stack our door sections. You should realize that all the sections are exactly the same. except for the bottom section, also known as Section 1. Section 1 differs from the rest because it has a vinyl floor seal. If your installation requires a lock assembly, you'll want to pre-drill the number 2 section for the hardware at this time. Now, center the bottom section in the door opening, level the section using a carpenter's level, and shim if necessary. It's essential that bottom sections are installed level. Drive a nail into the jamb and bend it over to temporarily hold the section in place. Stack the second section into the open and secure with nails. Next, stack the remaining sections into the opening in proper sequence and secure with nails. Now it's time to install hardware. First, fasten the bottom roller brackets into place. Next, attach the end and center hinges. Start with the bottom section and work your way up. Be sure that your hinges are not installed upside down. When installed properly, the single round hole, or smallest vertical slot, is at the bottom of the hinge. Also, make sure that you install the proper hinge to the proper door section. The number 1 hinge should be installed on the bottom section and in the center of each remaining section. The number 2 hinge goes on the top corners of the second section, and so on. Now, this is extremely important because each hinge is constructed differently. Now, install the top fixtures. Then, loop the lift cable over the cable studs on the bottom brackets and install rollers into all the fixtures. Tilt the vertical track laterally and slide it over the rollers. Raise the vertical track 3/4 to 1 inch off the floor and 1/2 inch away from the edge of the door. To prevent splitting the wood jambs, pre-drill the holes for the jamb bracket with a 1/4 inch drill bit, and then secure the brackets with 5/16 by 1 5/8 inch lag screws. Fasten the vertical flag bracket with lag screws, making sure the track and angles are plumb. And then repeat the operation to erect the track on the opposite side of the door. Be sure that the tops of the vertical tracks are level with each other. At this time, you can remove all the nails that were used to hold your door sections in place. Next, install the horizontal track and side bearing plate. The end of the track will be supported by angle iron brackets. Begin building the support by first attaching a piece of angle iron across 2 ceiling trusses. Then, drop a second piece of angle iron down to the horizontal track. With a third piece of angle iron, construct a diagonal brace. Finally, attach the horizontal track to the vertical brace. In this method, just about all the door's hardware will be installed, and the tracks will be assembled prior to stacking the door sections. Now, I say just about because our DoorTech specialists have found that it's best to leave off a few components to make sure stacking goes as smoothly as possible. Now, here's what I mean. Attach all hardware to the bottom section, including rollers. Attach a left and center hinge and left roller to sections 2 and 3. And attach the top brackets, rollers, and truss bar if it's necessary, to section 4. As with our first method, always be sure that you're using the correct hinge and that it's not installed upside down. Now, assemble the vertical and horizontal track. Then, with the bottom door section already in place, install the track. Pre-drill and lag the track into place, working from top to bottom. You can check for plumb by using a level or by measuring the distance between the vertical track and sidewall. Now, this measurement can also be helpful for squaring the horizontal track. As with method number 1, secure the rear of the horizontal tracks to the ceiling with angle iron. Now, repeat the same steps to erect track on the opposite side of the door. And as in method 1, you'll want to make sure that the tops of the vertical tracks are level with each other. Now it's time to place our torsion bar. But before you do so, I need to point out that the steps we're about to detail also apply to the stacking and nailing technique we previously reviewed. You also need to know that torsion spring assemblies are engineered for the size and weight of the door, and that the assembly will consist of either 1 or 2 color-coded springs. Red indicates left side, and black indicates right side. This color code applies to all of our components. Okay, let's move on. Slide the left drum, center bearing, spring assembly, and right drum onto the torsion tube, and then pre-drill and lag the center bearing support to the spring pad. Raise the shaft into position and slide it into the end bearings. Position the shaft so an equal amount extends past the end bearings on both sides of the door, and connect the spring to the center bearing plate. You can now carefully set the number 2 section. Install a roller into the left side hinge and swing the section into place. Next, install a roller into the right side track and attach the right side hinge. Follow the same procedure for the remaining panels. Now, working from one side to the other, align the sections. Fasten all the hinges and place the last roller in the top bracket. Feed the lift cable up to the right drum, making sure to keep it between the roller stems and wall. To prevent the shaft from turning, attach a pair of locking pliers to the shaft and rest one end against the wall. Place the stop end of the cable through the slot in the edge of the drum with the stop on the shaft side of the slot. Revolve the drum until the cable is taut and tighten the set screws. You'll install the left side in the same manner. Okay, we've installed the door and hung our torsion bar. Now it's time to wind our spring. This is a relatively straightforward process, but once torqued, a torsion bar can be dangerous, so be sure to use an extra bit of caution. Before you begin tensioning, notice the line painted along the length of the spring. This line will allow you to count the number of turns as you wind. To prevent the door from inadvertently opening, fasten locking pliers, or a C-clamp, to the track just above the third roller. In most cases, wind the spring by pushing up, turning the spring counterclockwise. If you're unsure of proper winding direction, however, just look at the spring's last coil. A good rule of thumb is to always wind in the direction that the end of the spring is pointing. Check your manufacturer's specification sheet for the correct number of turns. Tensioning will be determined by the height and size of the garage door. To tension the spring, insert a winding bar into the winding cone and push up. Then, insert a second bar in the winding cone, push up, and remove the first bar. Repeat this process until the spring is properly tensioned. You'll notice as you wind that the spring grows in length and shrinks in diameter. After the spring has been tensioned, you'll need to add some stretch or space to the spring so that it doesn't become spring-bound. A spring is designed to lift with specific foot-pounds per inch, and if the spring is bound or rubbing on itself, it will decrease its lifting force. Here's how to keep a spring from binding. Once you finish winding, tap the upper part of the winding bar. This simple action will stretch the spring and eliminate binding. Now, tighten the winding cone set screws and remove the winding bars. Then, remove the locking pliers from the torsion bar shaft and check the door to make sure it's working properly. Move the locking pliers, or C-clamp, from above the number 3 roller to just below the same roller, and slowly open the door until the number 2 roller touches the pliers. Now, lower the door until it's approximately 1 foot off the floor. The door is considered reasonably balanced if the door does not jump off the ground or fall to the floor. Another common test is to place each of the sections in the radius. Each of the top 3 sections should rest in the radius, and the bottom section should coast to the full open position. To achieve reasonable balance, the spring may need further adjustment. If the door is too heavy off the floor, increase the spring tension by increasing the number of turns. If the door is hard to pull down, decrease the number of turns. And remember that when you're making adjustments, do so in 1/4 turn increments. Up to this point, we spent a good amount of our time discussing torsion bar systems. But there's another way a garage door can be balanced, and that's with extension springs. Now, it's important to realize that with an extension spring assembly, only the first 3 sections of a 4-section door are hung prior to installing the actual extension springs. The 4th section will be placed in position after spring tension has been applied. You should also know that you'll need to refer to a spring chart for the recommended length of the spring. The size of a spring will be determined by the height and size of the garage door. Begin by fastening sheaves to the horizontal angle. Then, fasten an eye bolt to the permanent track hangers. Loop a spring over the eye bolt, and connect a sheave to the other end of the spring. Slowly raise the door to the full open position and secure it from closing. You may need assistance with this procedure. Know your weightlifting limits and work safely. Feed the cable over the front sheave, through the spring sheave, and with a 3-hole clip and S-hook, fasten the cable to the horizontal track. Remove the locking pliers, install the final door section, and test for proper operation. The door is considered reasonably balanced when it will stay, not fall or raise, in a partially open position. If the springs need adjustment, clamp the door in its full open position and move the adjusting S-hooks forward for more tension or backward for less tension. Be sure to maintain equal spring tension on each side. Now it's time to install the spring containment kit. Feed the wire through the spring, pull it tight, and secure it to the vertical brace and front flag angle. We've just shown you 2 methods for installing a typical residential garage door. You'll learn other approaches, and of course there are many types of doors that will require additional steps and techniques. But now you have the fundamental knowledge you need to complete a basic installation. Having said all that, here are a few final steps you'll need to perform. Lightly lubricate spring wire and all moving parts with oil. Be sure to apply all the necessary warning tags to springs and doors, and place the owner's manual next to the door so that it's available to the end user. Finally, you want to make sure that your customers have nothing to say about their new garage door except how nice it looks and how well it works. You can do a fantastic job with your installation, but leave a mess and your customer will only remember the mess. So be a professional and clean the door and the floor.